1. It's been really hard in my area to find a job in the restaurant industry, which is really strange. I've been serving, bartending, training, manager, bottle service, hostess, etc. in the industry. I applied to literally 75 places and didn't hear back from anyone. If I did hear back, they told me that, yeah, they have a hiring thing up online, but they're not hiring. So I get an interview at a place that's very well known. I've worked for them before for 2 years as a bartender and a server. I left there on good terms. I went to work at a golf course. Big mistake, and I also moved. Other than that, they loved me. They told me I could come back at any time, so I applied to one of the locations closer to my home. The Bees, if you know, you know. Went in this week to do training. The trainer I had was nice, but as someone who has trained people before, it felt weird. She started crying because the manager yelled at her, and apparently they've been having it out at each other for a long time. So the entire shift she's moping around and not being helpful. And that's okay, because I already knew what I was doing. The computer system literally has never changed. So after watching her enter an order, mind you, this was my first shift on training, I already remembered the computer. So I asked her if I could start putting in orders, and I did perfect. She was literally trying to find anything to nitpick me on. Which she ended up saying that I was checking my tables too often. The funny thing was, though, I wasn't. She was sitting on her butt at the end of the bar. Our guests had run out of drinks. That's not bothering your guests. Girl, for God's sake, I used to be a trainer at that restaurant at a different location. I didn't say that, I just happened to mention that, yeah, I used to work at one of the other locations. I wasn't cocky. I went in there to help and do my job. I don't know if I can freaking hang on for another shift, and I have to go in tonight. The big thing was right now they're having dollar drinks, and I'm sorry, but the clientele that comes into that location is not the greatest. I worked from very high-end restaurants to very low-end slum bars. I'm curious as to what people average at the Bees. They told me it's useless working the day because old people don't tip. Then at night, you have all this animosity going on in drama, which I know it's the restaurant industry, I get it. But I have to be in the middle of all this crap. And then be the whipping boy, pretty much. I do feel bad I had to call in yesterday. I know you're all going to roll your eyes. I would too if I was listening to this. But my father-in-law, who just got out of hospital last week, legit, he couldn't walk again, so my fiancé was at work and I was the only family member able to take Dad to the hospital. He didn't want to go by ambulance. My fiancé also said he needs me at home, and he realizes that now. So I don't know what to do. I'm looking for a place where I can work during the morning, so someone can stay home with our house, because we do live in a dangerous neighborhood. So someone does need to be here all the time. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about going in today and having a conversation with one of the managers. The GM is off on vacation. But I do want to tell him that my availability isn't open anymore, because my father-in-law is not doing well and I'm going to have to be the one that picks up the slack. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law passed away 2 years ago. That's what happens when you get old and have old parents. Back to the money thing. The girl literally only made maybe $50 that night. We had an $85 check, and the woman tipped $5. Then again, I probably would have too, because of the bad attitude that girl had. I was trying to make things better, but it was a crap show for real. Any advice would be great. I am so sorry for rambling. Hellfreezer's note. Are you really far away from your other location, the place you used to work? Because I feel like they'd probably welcome you back there quite easily, because those are the ones that said you could come back. If that's an option, I would definitely look into it, even if it means you have a slightly longer journey. It might be a much healthier environment. If not, definitely start looking for other work. Sounds like the best option. 2. So this happened last summer. I'm a 26-year-old man. At the time, I was a front-of-house supervising manager at a golf club on a resort that catered to a lot of families. It was 4th of July weekend, and we were beyond slammed, with a line out the door due to it being early on in the day, and the main restaurant on the resort wasn't open for lunch. We were understaffed in the kitchen at the time, and 2 of the line cooks had unfortunately called out. Given that I had previous experience as a line cook, I stepped into the kitchen that day and left my newly trained supervisor to watch the floor with help from another server who doubled as a soup when needed. I had been in the kitchen for several hours, cooking as fast as physically possible, given I was a bit rusty, when my new soup comes into the kitchen telling me there's a woman demanding to speak to someone above her. I walk out of the kitchen, still wearing a chef coat. She looks me up and down and then asks incredulously if I'm the supervisor. I had thrown a bandana on to hold back my hair, so I didn't really look like one. I told her, yes, I am. We are understaffed and I needed to assist the kitchen. She then says the fateful words that many of us that have worked at this resort hate to hear. Well, first off, let me tell you that I am a homeowner. At this place, the resort was technically funded and ran by a board of homeowners. But a number of them over the years have taken that to mean that they can push all of those working on the resort around, even though most of them are not involved in the board, which wouldn't be reason for them to be terrible to people anyway. She goes on to tell me how long she and her family have been waiting for food, 20 minutes, even though every guest has been told at the door that we are understaffed and food was going to take around 35 minutes. She then goes on to tear into me about how we had ruined her weekend holiday with her family, and how we should all be ashamed of ourselves, before finally demanding we comp her family's meals. Ding, ding, ding. Now, I won't beat around the bush. At the moment, I could hear the ticket machine going off and I caved, simply to get her to sit down as she was in the way of my staff running the food that was ready. A few moments later, the manager of one of the snack shops on property came in to get change from our safe, so I went and put in the combo for her and made change. As I came out of the office, I was approached by a man who had been sitting earlier at the table with the homeowner. It turns out to be her husband. He chews me out in the same way his wife did, at which point I tell him, "Sir, I have already comped your entire meal. There is nothing more I can do." Then I did a 180 and walked away. Then he barked at me. I turned to him and pointed at what I was wearing. "You see what I'm wearing? I'm not a cook. I'm the front of house supervisor. We are severely understaffed and missing employees. Now I need to go back to the kitchen and finish cooking your food, if you would ever like to eat it. Goodbye." He looked a bit stunned. Looking back on it, I wish I'd just told them to either wait or leave on the busiest weekend of the year. I'm still a little proud of how I handled it. 3. To get the full picture, I'm going to provide a bit of backstory and a bit of detail. At my last job, I dropped the ball with a guest. I had gotten sat with a man on his own in my section. My GM at the time hated if we transferred tables or tabbed them out, and had them restart with a new server. I was getting ready to get cut and it was getting late, and didn't want to stay any longer than needed, so while the guy wasn't sitting there for more than 2 minutes, the situation was entirely my fault. I tried finding my section's buddies to take him as I didn't have any other tables. After discussing who'd take him, he had come up to us, seeing we were discussing with each other, and yelled, "Did none of y'all want to effing serve me?" and stormed out, and a minute later came back to ask for a manager. I should have just greeted him to get him started, and I've learned from that situation. Now, last Saturday, I'm at work at a different restaurant. It's 2 other servers inside with me and 2 outside, and it's super dead inside. The other 2 I was with are black and I'm white Hispanic mix. This is important. It was around 9 and had on a table. The guy had 2 and the girl had 1. My male coworker, a closer, walks by and I asked him if he wants to get one of us or both me and the other girl out of here as it's dead. He says he'd like both of us to go home, but to ask our manager. During this time, a black couple, also important to note, sits down in my section next to my table. I also have to note that they were the only black customers in the dining room, also important. So I go outside and ask my manager if he could cut one or both of us as it's dead inside. He says it's only 9. We closed at 12 that night, to only cut one person. Okay, cool. I go back inside and look for my closer, but can't find him, and by this time the couple has been there for a minute or 2. So as not to repeat my previous mistake, I go greet them and get them started and figure out who's gonna take it afterwards, so they don't continue waiting. They order drinks from the bar and get an appetizer to start. I walk away and find my closer at the bar. And since I have to go over there anyways, I walk over and tell him what our manager said. I asked if I could be the one cut, as I had to come back in the following morning to open. He says sure, so now it's him and the other girl. I give him a rundown of what they got, and I suppose during the interaction with him, I pointed at the couple with my thumb, but like sideways. I asked if he wanted them or if our other coworker did. He first said him, but then backtracked and said he'd go ask our other coworker so they could just split the dining room in half. He comes back telling me to transfer it to her, so I do. I'm still waiting for the drinks after this, and by the time they're ready, and I go to give them to the couple, and see 2 waters on the table, so I'm thinking, okay, cool, she already came up and talked to them. Set their drinks down and walk away. The rest of the time there is occasionally a check on my one table, as they're just drinking and listening to the live music we had that night, and doing my cut work so I get to go home. I don't remember food running during this time at all, so I was only going to my table and doing cut work. They eventually tab out and leave, and by the time I get to rolling silverware, another table is sitting where my last table was at. Eventually I have sweeping left and sweep the half of my section that is empty, and the couple from earlier ask me if there is a manager, and I say yes. They ask if they can speak to him or her. I say of course, and get my manager. I tell him 14 wants to talk to him. I don't know what about. I get back to sweeping and hear the woman say, I'm a bit confused, and see my manager get closer to hear her, thinking maybe the live music was a bit loud, and continue sweeping till I'm done, and ask my closer if he needs me to do anything else. He says no, so I have him sign my check out. My manager ended up being at the table for like 10 minutes, and I end up waiting by the table waiting for him to walk away, to give my check out as to not disturb the conversation. He gets up, and I follow him, and being the nosy bitch I am, ask what that was about. He says, you, and I laugh, and ask again. He says, no, I'm serious, it was about you. They said you're racist. I ask what happened, and he's comping their entire meal. Says he needs to look mad at me as they can see us, and tells me to wait a minute. I then follow him to dry storage, and he proceeds to tell me they said I'm racist because I pushed them off to another black server, so I didn't have to take care of them. That I had greeted them and got them drinks but never came back to them, never talked to them. I was pointing at them. I was talking to every other table besides them. I literally was going up to one of 6 tables in the dining area because it was mine, and they were upset. I recount the story to him from after I walked away from him outside, and he says he understands and knows I'm not like that. That he understands I didn't want to wait for another hour or so to leave just for one table, and that he's not mad at me, but he's just telling me what they said. I later saw my female coworker that night that had taken the table, and when I brought it up she said they were so wrong for that, and stupid AF and not to worry about it. So, even if I was doing the right thing, I was still in the wrong, and made the customer upset. Screw serving. 4. I recently took a position as a kitchen manager at a nursing home. When I was hired, I was told my hours are 9 to 5:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. I've been here for a few months, and I constantly get calls and texts during my off hours and every weekend that I respond to as quickly as I can. Usually they're texts that someone can't find a specific ingredient, or that they don't understand a recipe, or that someone is causing drama in the kitchen. Sometimes they're about someone calling off, and I have to either figure out who will fill that position or fill it myself, on top of my own responsibilities. Sometimes these calls are at 5 in the morning, since that is when the morning shift goes in to cook breakfast, and I don't get to them until 6:30 or so when I typically wake up. I get paid hourly at $20 an hour. I didn't mind this at first, because I was finally getting a job where I had stable hours and benefits with weekends off. But the administrator of the nursing home had a talk with me about not being easily reachable when my staff needs me, and that I take a while to respond. So my staff will instead call him, the administrator, when they need something. I feel confused because I am not salaried, so I only get paid when I am on the clock. I already feel conflicted that I am bothered during my off hours without compensation, but the administrator said that this is what food service management is like, and that it is what I signed up for. I have worked in food service for 15 years. I have never run into this before. I do feel bad that he is also bothered on his off days, but I feel it's unfair to everyone to be on call all the time. I feel that there should be some sort of system, but I am the only kitchen manager with no other lead. I constantly work shifts outside my hours because people call off all the time, so sometimes I end up working 5 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. or 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I still manage to squeeze my managerial tasks in there, to only get a couple of hours overtime, because they really get upset about overtime. They'll send me home early other days to avoid OT, and try to give someone else my tasks, which never goes well, and I end up having to clean up the mess the next day. There was no one in my position before I filled it, so the kitchen was running on wires. I've been told I saved this kitchen by the clinical director, staff members, the R&D who comes in once a month, and the residents. I get compliments all the time about the quality of my work, but I cannot be on 24/7, and if that's the expectation, then I feel like maybe I deserve a raise. Am I being unreasonable? I feel like I should be compensated more for these expectations, but I wanted to get a general sense of what I should be expecting here before I speak with the administrator about this, as this is my first time in a nursing home kitchen. Update. So I spoke with the administrator, and he said we will begin a new on-call system that will include other directors in the facility, so we all take turns having a weekend. I agree that this is better than always being expected to be on call, but the other directors are salary while I am hourly, and I won't be able to make plans too far from the facility in case I am needed at a moment's notice. I'm going to ask for compensation for that, outside of just clocking in if I'm called on site, so I'm going to have to think about what a reasonable on-call compensation would be, or just ask for a raise to compensate the extra time worrying about work. Any ideas are welcome. Unfortunately, when it comes to working in nursing home situations, I've come across and I've done a few stories where essentially they're very poorly ran, so the work that is there is lumped onto other people unfairly, and the expectations rise and rise and rise without getting proper compensation until people burn out or they leave for greener pastures. I hope that's not the situation you're in, and that they are willing to fix things. It's good that they're trying to institute an on-call system, but as you say, you're paid hourly. You should not be expected to shore up the slack when they're not willing to pay you for it. What they might need to do is have an assistant manager there or something. You know, you mentioned in the comments you are the only manager at the restaurant. If you have an assistant, then maybe they should be taking care of some of those responsibilities. Basically, at the end of the day, they're not willing to compensate you for the work you're doing, so why should you do the work if you're not getting compensated for it? If they can't give you a solid answer for that, start applying for other jobs. As soon as you've got one, dip out. 5. This was a couple of years ago, but one of the most mind-bogglingly stupid restaurant experiences I've had. It seemed to actively rely on multiple people not using their brain or having the most basic understanding of how restaurants or how even time itself work. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Our lunch rush is over. We've cut 2 servers, 1 manager, 1 host, 1 bartender, and if I recall correctly, 2 people in the back. There's like 1 table in the dining room and a couple at the bar. Typical. Suddenly, 3 full school buses pull into our parking lot. Out start coming kids from what I guess is out of the area, as they are wearing unfamiliar uniforms. They're probably in the 15 to 16-year-old range. This is so far unfortunate, but not the end of the world bad. My boss is actually a bit excited because it's gonna make the day's numbers look good, but I've got a sinking feeling. Other server and I start getting pictures and stuff ready while the host and manager start seating them. It's 42 people in total. I go up to the 2 adults with the group and introduce myself and ask how they're handling the bill, praying for a single check. They smile at me and say, yes, 1 check, yay! Except, all the kids are gonna have to pay for their drinks themselves if they don't want water. Okay, fine. Annoying, but okay. So I go up and down the lines, fast getting all the drinks. About 3/4 of them are non-waters. Fine. Then, as my server buddy goes back and starts making them, I get the adult drinks. As I'm just about to turn away, one of the women stops me and drops the bombshell. We're on a tight schedule. We have a debate tournament to get to. We need to be out of here in 25 minutes, okay? Deer in the headlights, look. You have a 42 top. I'm just starting to get their drinks. We have 2 cooks. Everyone is eating. No one has even ordered. My boss overheard this. We lock eyes. We're screwed. To her credit, she immediately runs to the kitchen to get on the line herself. At this point, I literally grab a chair to stand on. Yelling over 40 talking children, I tell them we are short on time, so have your orders ready as soon as I get to you. I start going down the lines, no chit-chat, no questions about any modifiers. I'm just best guessing at this point. They aren't paying for the food anyway. About every 8 orders, I run to the point of sale and throw them in. Most of our food is fast. A couple of people ordered a few things that would take too long, so I just said, you don't have time, pick something else. I'm not trying to be a dick, but I'm working with what I have. I know my boss is going to kill me later, but I know at this point all those drinks the kids ordered are free. I'm not going to have time to individually process 30 extra $3 tickets. The kids don't know better. They're not going to be all ready to pay. They're going to be talking to their friends, be annoyed we're interrupting, take forever to pull out a card, etc. To our kitchen and boss's credits, they're flying. Everyone else's food is running, and it's going fairly smoothly. But the women keep checking their phones and frowning. We get the last plates out pretty much at the time they're supposed to be leaving. To the kids' credit, they were all eating pretty fast. The women start rushing the kids, telling them to get back on the buses, and they had to go. I checked my phone. 32 minutes from the beginning of order taking to completion of the meal of a 42 top. Pretty damn good in my opinion. As I said before, we gave away about $100 in drinks. My boss, thankfully, completely backed me on not trying to charge for it, or waste time by remaking all waters and taking the drinks already on the table back. But to this day, I still remember the numbers on the check. The total was $532. The women looked at it and both laughed. She turned to me and said, "Dang, that was so close!" They gave us $550 cash to cover the bill. Yep, $18 tip. On a 42 top, we got from door to door in 40 minutes. They even left a review 4 out of 5 stars. Said the food was great and the people were friendly, but the food took longer than they expected. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, episode 260. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe, and support me on my Patreon page for as little as $1 a month, which is linked in the description. You get all the videos at once on a Monday as a thank you for your support. We also have memberships on the channel if that's something that interests you, depending on how you want to approach it. Basically, Patreon is pay what you feel. You get early access to the videos. With the memberships, there's 3 different tiers, and you select the one with the benefits you want. Okay, we've no other business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. We'll keep it food-themed for this one. So what is the one food stuff that goes pretty much great with everything, even things you don't think it would? I'm going to say bacon. Bacon goes surprisingly well with sweet things. Peanut butter and bacon go well. You can put bacon bits on top of donuts and things. You can add it to mac and cheese, pretty much any dish just as a topping or as an integral part. Put it in a quiche, an omelette, anything like that. And it works. Let me know what yours are in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one was about habits you developed when COVID was at its height that you haven't let go of. And today's answer comes from I Am Blackthorn. Since COVID, I have been less sociable. People showed their true colors during the pandemic, and lack of care for others convinced me that too many people are ignorant, selfish, and have less character than a grubworm's anus or an overused, soggy teabag. Therefore, I mainly observe them from a distance and contemplate if they are friend or foe. I work in the medical field. I saw far too many people die. I will never forgive and never forget. Thank you very much for your answer. I am Blackthorn. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, Thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.